Hello and welcome everybody to the Shade Tree Commission meeting for February 10th, 2002. My name is Roxanne Millay-Bruni and I'm going to be stepping in tonight as sort of an interim chair for the evening. I wanted to introduce several people who are in attendance tonight, or actually more correctly, allow them to introduce themselves so that way you know who they are. Just as a casual introduction for myself, I work for Ohio University, and with the city, I help plan some of the floral arrangements that you might see up at the Armory and Stimson Avenue. We call that initiative Athens in Bloom. I've also been serving on the commission for a year now. Jim?
I'm Jim Dyer. My other life, I'm a geographer in the Department of Geography at Ohio University. And I've been on this committee since 2019, but as a, what's the term? Not an adjunct, what do you call it?
Alternate.
Alternate. And, so this is my first as a full-blown
Full member. Excellent.
Okay.
Chris?
I'm Chris Paul. I'm new to the commission. So
But certainly not new to the city,
no. So
having
people
sat
might
on council.
not recognize my name, but thank
Yeah,
you.
having done many initiatives helping behind the scenes, or actually in front of the scenes, maybe more than we are, with council getting some really great language in the Muni Code for trees. So thank you. Ben?
Hi, my name is Ben Ziff. I'm on Athens City Council, and I'm our City Council representative to the Shade Tree Commission. My full-time job is making coffee at a local coffee shop, so buy local.
Excellent. Please, go ahead, introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Dr. Catherine Ann Jordan, and I am the new director of Athens Arts, Parks, and Recreation. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you for coming.
I'm Erin Helms. I'm the Program Operations Manager for the Athens Arts, Parks, and Recreation. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy?
Great. I'm Andy Stone. I'm the Service Safety Director for the City of Athens.
And also in attendance, we have other people who would like to just shout out and give an introduction.
Hi, I'm David Riggs. I'm the co-director for the City of Athens.
Sam?
Sam Crowell, Athens City Council.
One of the things that we have talked about with Shade Tree Commission for a while is how important it is for the commission to work closely with the city. And I think that since I started, we've had individual relationships with each one of you, but it means a lot that you are willing to come out here tonight to join us, because I think it's really going to facilitate some of the conversations that we want to have. In the Muni Code, Shade Tree has responsibilities towards the city. I mean, and a lot of it is that we are advisors to the city. But we also need to hear from the city, what are your priorities and how can we help you? You know, people think about the Shade Tree Commission and they go, what is that? And a lot of it is caring for trees that are in the city right away. But we also oversee other programs, including the Pollinator Garden program. Athens in Bloom is also a part of Shade Tree Commission in an unusual way. So we're going to go through several agenda items tonight. And hopefully we're just going to have a really good conversation. There are some things that are on the agenda where we maybe have to table because we just don't have enough information. And then there are other things that we're going to, just have a lively conversation. So I would encourage everybody to participate, okay? So the first thing on the agenda is the election of the officers, and Mayor Steve Patterson was not able to join us today and to swear in our officers, but we have been told that we are all for real and can actually proceed with the meeting tonight, which is good. We have minutes from the December 2021 meeting. I was wondering if people on council had read those meeting minutes. I have, so I would like to vote for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, does anybody have any objections? All in favor? Aye? Okay, the minutes for December 2021 are approved. As part of that, I just wanted to thank some of our colleagues who have stepped down from their positions, and just to say we are eternally grateful, especially to David Ingram for his leadership for many years. Trust me, he will be missed. If he were here, I would not be in this seat right now. So we do have our guests who we have introduced, and once again, I wanted to thank you for being a part of this meeting today. The next agenda item is to ask whether or not there are any Title 33 permit right-of-way public land issues.
The code office doesn't have anything for the shade tree for the Title 33 tree permits, right-of-way issues, or public lands issues for planting trees.
Okay, one thing, and you can tell me, Dave, if it falls within that or Title 37, it's sort of in between, I think, is the celebratory and memorial tree application. You gave us a copy of the application, and you're going to be sending us an electronic copy for our approval.
That's actually found in Title 37 Landscaping Ordinance.
Okay.
The celebration tree, as well as a couple of the pollinator gardens, so those are all Title 37.
Okay, so it looks like I segued right into 37 unless somebody has anything for 33. Any issues with 33?
I would just note that we did have a conversation and some information to you about what happened for the right-of-way trees in front of the county building, so you guys are aware of that.
Right, we'll be bringing that up as a discussion item after, if that's okay, as a separate issue. But yes, we will be discussing that. Okay, so moving on from Title 33 back to where I was with the Celebration Memorial Tree. We do have an application which says that somebody can purchase a tree for $100 payable to Athens, and that tree will be maintained for 3 years. I can tell you that my concern with that is that when we went and looked at the tree bank, and we estimated the cost for trees and also for the maintenance, the planting and the maintenance, that cost comes out to closer to $225 per tree. So I don't know if it is possible, but I would like to suggest that that price be increased. Dave, go ahead.
So I'd just like to point out, it's not really clear in the code that the city will purchase the tree. So it's our assumption that the applicant will purchase the tree. The application permit is $100, and we will maintain that tree. That would make a little more sense to me, that if the applicant purchases the tree, you get a chance to approve the tree species before that happens, and then the city would have that $100 to maintain the tree for 3 years. That, to me, sounds a little more reasonable. It is not clear in the code which way, but we've made that assumption that the tree is purchased by the applicant.
Okay, so maybe we can clarify in code that the purchase can be made by them, or perhaps we can also say that we can purchase it via our tree bank, and they would pay us whatever the equivalent cost is. But I still have a concern because we're not taking into account the cost of the actual planting of the tree. And so, you know, our current contract for the city is quite a bit more than that when you plant a tree and then also maintain it. As a matter of fact, our contract that we have right now assumes only 1 year of maintenance, and this is 3 years of maintenance. So I don't think we're going to solve it tonight, but I do think it's important for us to look and to ask the city, is that a realistic cost? Also, in talking, you know, with Kevin, you know, from your area, it's not clear that the city always has the capacity to plant trees. You know, there are times where, you know, grounds crews have the extra capacity, but there's also times when they don't, and that's why we contracted externally. So I think that what I would encourage you to do is also to ask yourself, when thinking about this particular program, is do we need to ensure that the charge for the planting of the tree is also included in the cost? Or is that something that when you review your resources, you feel like you can handle?
I'll speak to this a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
please.
It really is a function of quantity in any given year.
Right.
So, if you have a year where there's a tremendous interest in the program to the extent that you're looking at, a dozen or a couple dozen people who want to purchase a tree and subsequently have the city staff plant and maintain, that creates a burden. It really does. If it's less than a dozen, if it's less than 6, and if it's well projected, we absolutely can do that. Inside the confines of our other duties. Typically when you plant trees, you plant them early in the spring or late in the fall. I mean, that's the time frame that you really want to put trees in the ground. And so if there is an applicant who wants to do this and who approaches the city in advance, several months in advance, and this body gets a chance to review it, suggest locations, and then use the program, I think we can put it in the queue, basically, of the other work that we do, and allow the applicant to purchase it. They pay their application fee, and then we get it all scheduled and planned, and the city plants it. But if we have a situation where someone comes and say, hey, I want to buy 12 trees and put them in the ground next week, and I want you guys to put them in the ground next week, we can't do that. And so that would be where I would say, somebody who's interested in purchasing a tree under this program, I don't want to dissuade them by making it onerous. It's just I can't do, lots of them, and that would be where I guess I would draw the line.
Yeah. One of the discussion that we did have when we were developing this program was that you can have a certain number of slots per growing or planting. There's 4 each spring and 4 each, and people just sign up for them. The other thing is that we did think some about a sliding scale with some help for people who were lower income and stuff, and that's something, with some of the other programs that we've done with the sliding scale, which is something that we can do as a community service sort of thing too, because I wouldn't want to always have this other issue of always having it so expensive. So, thank you.
I'm trying to take notes at the same time as talk. I don't know how David did that. My concern, going back to it and just pushing maybe one more time, is I hear what you're saying about the sliding scale. I also hear what you're saying, Andy, about, resources. But is $100 the right number? And I don't know that it is. And I think that what I would ask is that before we put out this revised document, that we do think about that, because once it's on that document, it's on that document. And I think that what you're hearing from at least me on Shade Tree and others is that cost should be considered. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I just wanted to point out that the ordinance does say that the cost is adopted by a separate ordinance that is approved by city council. So any changes, it's not just a change to the permit, it has to go through city council for approval.
Yep.
Just make sure we take that.
But to that point, and I don't mean to speak over David,
Yeah.
but to that point, whatever this body recommends, it would be my expectation that city council would probably adopt.
Well, as I said, right now, we have, a bid from an external contractor that says it's closer to $150, and that's assuming that it's not the price of the tree. It's the planting and the maintenance for 1 year, and you're doing it for 3 years. So I think that $150 is probably the lowest that you want to go. So that's would be my recommendation. How do you all feel about that?
Do you know where the original $100 came from? Has that been there for a while? Or?
Well, the program hasn't been around for too long, so it can't be that long. And to my knowledge, since that came out, I think we've had one tree? Is that,
We've had one request for a permit. He hasn't decided if he wants to actually apply.
so I think we can change it if we
So
want.
what, do you know what the $100 was meant to cover? Was it,
It was meant to cover the planting and the
Okay.
maintenance for 3 years.
And possibly a memorial plaque. That was one of the other discussions about where that funding comes in and how much more that would be for the people, if you want to have a plaque with it.
well, it
So-
seems like that figure, the $100 should reflect the true cost of all those things, plus maybe a little buffer.
Okay. So I think that what you're hearing as a recommendation is to consider raising the price to $150 and then to also specify that the owners pay for the tree. So at this point, if this is going to require not only revisions to the document, does it require changes to code in addition? And then also it needs to go before council. You know, at this
It
point,
would be probably just Title I for it. It would only be going through Title I because it would only be the money change,
okay,
which isn't really going through
okay.
anything else. It's really easy.
I'd like to make a suggestion, which we haven't done since I've been part of Shade Tree, is that when we have initiatives like this, I would like to sort of assign, if you could call it that, a Shade Tree commissioner and then maybe the city contact who are going to be responsible for that particular action item. So are there anybody on council who's willing to actually shepherd this particular change in code and just working with the city to shepherd it through council?
Who's on the committee who would do that? Ben could do that.
We do have a council member on this commission.
Indeed.
No, I mean, that's what I'm
It would be a
saying.
logical nexus of the two
Yeah, I feel
bodies.
like elephant in the room, like I'm right here.
No.
So that would be a Title I, that would be pretty easy.
Okay. So, but in addition to Ben, is there somebody from the commission, the Shade Tree Commission, who should work with Ben, or is this easy enough that Ben can just run with it?
Oh, I love help.
I will help him.
Okay, so Chris and Ben. And who from the city? Who's going to be the contact person?
Well, in this particular instance, probably David is the most appropriate.
Okay.
It is a permit that we're going to
Okay.
change a fee to, and there'll be an administrative function of changing that permit.
Okay, so here's your action item. By the next Shade Tree Commission meeting, please provide an update.
Okay, we can do that.
We got
Okay,
this. Can
good,
do.
excellent. Okay, any other Title 37 landscape ordinance issues? I know of one. We have a pollinator application request, and it's actually from me. And it went to code, and it's back now in our hands. So we haven't had a chance to look. We haven't had a chance to review it yet, but that will be reviewed by one of our Shade Tree commissioners, other than me, and that will go back to David. Now, as part of the pollinator garden, we did post the guidelines. They are on the Shade Tree Commission webpage now, along with several references and resources for people who are interested in pollinator gardens. One thing, David, I have a question for you. It says something about if the application is approved, then the person can pay $25 to get a plaque. Do we have plaques yet?
We do not. I'm working with the Soil and Water Conservation District office to kind of do a sketch plan or a sketch of what we want to have as a plaque or as a signage for the yard, for the pollinator yard program. That, of course, will go through this committee for review and approval.
Okay. Oh,
I wonder if the Bee City has just really generalized ones that can be bought in, I bet they do.
I can check and see.
Yeah, and they might be pretty cheap, so, since we're a bee city, USA city. For bees.
So Athens is?
Yes. That's something that the Sustainability
Keep on
Commission
learning.
did.
Okay. So, David, can I task you with that too, just as an update to the committee for the next meeting?
I will
Okay.
update you on Bee City. Let's see what they have available.
Or any other plaques that seem appropriate. Okay, good. Anything else on Title 37? All right. So, we're always talking about the maintenance of the tree canopy, and I don't know if it exactly fits in here. It might have fit somewhere else, but we do have one thing where we did get a list from Andrew. It's the list from AEP that lists all the streets in Athens that will be having tree trimming within the next several, I guess, weeks, months. We have lists of streets, but we don't actually have times. But if anybody is interested and wants to know whether or not their street will be involved, they can contact the city, and the city can give them information about that. In addition, we have had an issue in the past where we're pretty good at planting trees and even maintaining them for their first year, but then we don't prune them. And that has led to a few issues for trees, and we have talked about a maintenance plan. That's important. Now, my concern is that while shade tree is advisory, we don't actually go out and do the planting and the pruning, and that is something that the city does. And I think what I would suggest is that the city come up with a plan and then tell us where we can be of assistance, whether it be that, you know, we or the city needs to go and have training to actually provide this. Some of us have gone through some pruning training. Right now, the city doesn't have an arborist. That is a bit of an issue. But I guess part of me is like, I don't want us to be telling you what to do and how you should spend your resources. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I would like the city to come to us with the plan rather than us necessarily dictating the plan. There are a lot of plans out there. Various cities have various maintenance plans. I mean, we can provide them to you. Ann Bonner has given them to us. And at first we were just going to go, this is what we should do. You know, every year we should be doing this. But if we're not actually doing the work, does it make sense for us to be dictating the terms? What do you all think about that?
I think that we can dictate terms to the point where you identify the best management practices that have to be done, all the management practices that have to be done for example, having an arborist, sort of thing that would be what we would like to see when they do the management. I think that there's maintenance planning that needs to happen and some of the other type of planning, just general management planning on some of these areas.
Yeah. Jim? Any comments?
I need more time to think about it.
Yeah, that's okay. Ben?
I mean, I think it's pretty fair to, maybe a little bit of give and take. I mean, it's important for this commission to help inform the city on how it makes decisions with trees. That's sort of the role of this body. But it is also, of course, important to take into account, the finite resources that the city has for maintaining all kinds of things already. So finding that happy middle ground is always good.
Yeah.
We need to make a budget, ask for a budget for this sort of thing so that it's a line item. I know that the budgeting process already went through, but something like that for all the maintenance and all the other program activities that hopefully will be happening. I think that that's something that Ann and I talked before the meeting, and she said budget.
Yeah.
She kept saying budget. So I'm
No.
saying budget.
No, I agree. When I joined, and one of the things that the mayor had specifically asked me to bring to the committee when I joined was that we had this enormous tree bank and we weren't using the trees. And it became apparent really quickly that one of the reasons why we weren't using them was because we didn't have the money to plant them. I mean, the trees in the tree bank, just so you know, are 2-inch diameter at breast height. Just to give you an idea, that's like 300 pounds of tree. They're big trees. They're not little itty bitty trees. And so they really do take quite a bit to plant and to maintain. And, so I did work with Steve and we got our $5,000 budget. It wasn't actually a line item. It was something that Andrew Chicky just was able to sneak in there. And you're right, the same thing. This year we were told $5,000 budget, but once again, it wasn't a line item. So I think that is something that we need to work towards because Andrew's like, I can sort of sneak $5,000 into the budget, but if I know it's a line item, we can actually give you more money. And we know that Shade Tree did give the city recommendations where they thought trees should go, especially in the Near East neighborhood. But in addition, the city also has priorities for planting trees in the West State Park. So the trees that we purchased last year have not been planted yet because construction was not done and then the ground froze. Hopefully construction will be done, ground will thaw, please God, and then we'll be planting some trees, right?
Are you talking about West State Street Park?
Yes,
Those
West
trees
State.
have been planted.
They were. See, we were not given an update. When were they planted, do you know?
In January, it might have been December. January went by really fast with all the snow days. But,
Okay, well,
They were
excellent.
planted. They have been planted.
Okay, well, I mean, that's a wonderful thing to hear. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't think that we were aware of that, and we were worried about the trees, so we're glad that they're in. Okay, once again, writing, sorry. Okay, so now we have a couple discussion items. I did mention the Asplund update on the work for AEP, so we will be having trees being maintained. Any comments on that item? Okay, moving on, neighborhood tree planting in the right-of-way, review draft letter to property owners. So Andrew did draft a letter that basically he believes, and I concur, that it's really important for the city to work with the neighborhood when they want to plant a tree. Ideally, the people want to have a tree. Believe it or not, there are actually people who don't want trees in their property. That's probably none of us. But the thought is that if we involve them in the process and let them help decide what trees are being planted, that they will keep an eye on those trees and help maintain them. And assume ownership of them, even if they are in the city's right of way. So I don't know if anybody looked at the draft. I also suggested some changes. What I would suggest, rather than going line by line on this, is if anybody has any suggested changes, you have my revised document. Feel free to keep on editing it and get your comments to Andrew as soon as possible.
I'd like to make
Yeah,
some
please.
ideas. Some of the things that will probably come forward when we talk about some of the other projects, like Arbor Day and stuff, have been probably being floated around for the last 3 years from, Athens Beautification Day not happening and those sort of things, which I think we can reuse all those. But something that like Nancy Walker and I were talking about with the letter is that if we also make a very educational bling bag to go with it. And they get a t-shirt and a coupon, a brochure on how to prune the tree and some information like that, so that, you know, they can talk about it, and it's an exciting kind of event for them, and that they would be our own best ambassadors afterwards. So that's just something we were talking last week, Nancy and I.
Okay. I'm not opposed to that. But
Some other towns do that sort of thing, and we have people who make, you know, reusable bags out of feed, you know, feed bags and stuff, so.
okay.
I think that one thing the city does not a good job of is advertising and making known our amazing projects that we do. And so if we do things like that, they're more likely to get a little bit of unearned media or earned media or something. Maybe they
Okay.
won't ignore us. But that's something that we do have to think
Okay.
about when we're doing these projects.
So I'm only in this chair for one meeting, hopefully, and then somebody else is going to be here. But you're going to hear me say something. I love ideas, but ideas don't go anywhere until it becomes an action item. And so I would say that if the people in this room agree with the sentiment that there should be an information gift bag that accompanies the tree planting, if we think that that is a good idea, and there are enough people in this room who have say that we can say yes, then people need to come forward and say, I will actually commit to doing that. So the first question that I'm going to ask the people in the room is, do we think that this is a good idea to explore? And then my second question is going to be, are there people in this room who are willing to explore that issue? Okay, so
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Are we going to talk about Arbor Day later?
Arbor Day is on
On
the
that?
next one on the agenda. Yes.
Maybe we can kill two birds with one stone with that one, and look at the possibility of doing it through that project. And so it would be something that have more bodies with like an ad hoc committee or something, right?
Yes, that could absolutely happen. Shade Tree commissioners ourselves do not need to do it, but there has to be somebody from Shade Tree Commission who is willing to lead that initiative.
Because
So,
that's
I
something
guess-
that we have to do for the Tree USA program, right? The Arbor Day programs that we have to do.
Sam, I think she's referring to you, but I'm not
Well, I
sure.
mean, I'm more familiar with the university's
Right.
Tree Campus USA or higher education program, but your question is whether you have to provide this.
Whether
packet of-
we have to do some type of Arbor Day event this year in order to fulfill our Tree USA program. So that's something that I know that why I know that is because Ann said it to me multiple times. So that's why I have it in my mind. So that's my Ann hat.
Okay, so the question is do we need to do an Arbor Day activity this year to meet Tree USA requirement? And who actually, that would be Andrew, right? He oversees the Tree
So
USA.
typically, what happens with most shade tree commissions is that the shade tree commission does that. That's part of their duties, is to actually do the Arbor Day events, so that then they can have the application that goes through the mayor to Ann and the ODNR.
So I agree. A lot of shade tree commissions do take on the responsibility of Tree USA requirements. But I am going to make this really blunt. We on the Shade Tree Commission have at least 4 main duties that we do. And right now, we have a committee of active members of about 4 members. So that means that each one of us is already assigned to one of our major duties that we must cover because of code. And I think I will speak on behalf of the commission, if that's okay. We are very eager to do more, but we need more people up here in order to help us do that. And I think that we need to prioritize what is in code, and then we then can proceed to what we think is the next best thing to do. And the Tree City, USA, I think is important, but we need your help. We can't, I'm going to say, I personally cannot take on that responsibility, having already overseeing the Pollinator Garden Initiative and Athens in Bloom. And, I think that the commissioners may begin to volunteer for other activities. So David, I absolutely hear what you're saying. And if that is the city's priority as the next thing that Shade Tree should do, that fifth item, then we need to have that discussion and we need to commit to that. But right now, if I can name the four things, I'm not sure. We have the pollinator gardens. We have reviewing trees when we have various, construction. Then we have removal of trees and also just general health checks with trees. And I'm missing one other item. But I just feel like we're being asked to do a lot with very few resources. And maybe that is a discussion that we have with the mayor to just get more people on Shade Tree so we can do more. Does anybody have an objection to that?
One thing we did with the Sustainability Commission, they started out having 5 people. And they were doing such an awesome job, we gave them more. City Council can do that through the whatever. I think that could be a totally logical thing too, of having more people, just not 5. There's 5 right now, 5 voting members, 2 alternates. Don't know, maybe we make the alternates real members, because, So, but that's something, I agree, Sustainability Commission did awesome stuff after they got the extra 2 people. One of the things with the commission is that it can have one person outside of the city be on it. That would be fair if we were talking about sustainability or, forests, urban forests or things, that helps.
Okay, so, I didn't know that. So we're allowed to have one person outside the city?
It depends on how the code that gives birth to the commission is written, so.
I thought it said that everybody had to be within city, but we can check.
Yeah, I think on this one is everybody has to be in the city. I don't think it says, but with the sustainability, I think it made, we at one point did write that in specifically.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah. So, David, I hope I'm not being unfair, and I've definitely heard you say, and Andrew has also expressed a real desire to have Shade Tree take that over. And I'm not saying no, I'm just saying I personally would not have capacity, and other members would have to step forward and say that that was something that we would do before we wrote it into code and said that we would do it.
So the way Tree City USA is set up, that you can't have a Tree City USA unless the tree commission is involved. You either you have 2 choices. You either have to have a city arborist who has a city forest program, or you have a tree commission that takes care of the Arbor Day. Those are the only 2 ways you can have a Tree City USA. And that I thought would have been one of the base requirements, or one of the base needs for the city. If you wanted to maintain, maintain a Tree City USA, you have to have the tree commission.
Yeah, and we do have a tree commission. It's just what I'm hearing you say is there somewhere in that document that says that the Shade Tree Commission has to host the Arbor Day? And if there is, then we need to see that
I'm a little out of my
language, and then we
depth.
better
Bob
do
would be
it.
better to explain this. but-
If you don't mind, let me go back and take a look.
Yeah.
And Roxanne, if you don't mind, if I can go ahead and jump in and give a
Please.
little history from my perspective. So I've been with this city since November of 2003, and in a variety of different capacities. And what I've watched from a city staff perspective, the tree responsibilities have bounced around. inside the organization to different places. We've had an arborist, not because there's a position for a city arborist on the books, but because somebody in a department at a given point in time has gone ahead and sought the education and certification to be that.
Yep.
And then they move positions to somewhere else, to where they no longer was it appropriate to be in that position. I'll give you some background on that. So the first city arborist since I've worked here was Ron Lucas. Many of you know Ron Lucas, and he was the street labor supervisor. And because there was a certain amount of the city-owned trees fell in the maintenance responsibility of the street crew, specifically when we're talking about trimming in rights of way, it seemed logical at the time that the street labor supervisor, gain that certification. And so that was the direction that we went. Subsequently, Ron got named to be the Deputy Service Safety Director. And this would have been back in the 2010 era timeframe. And he carried that role of city arborist and functionally the liaison for programs, related to things like Tree City USA, American in Bloom, and a variety of other efforts and initiatives to that role as the Deputy Service Safety Director. It wasn't traditionally in that particular spot. It was just that he carried it because he became the arborist, and then that was an interest area, and then he subsequently moved to Deputy Service Safety Director, and then served. And Ron, God bless him, he'll never tell you no.
Yeah.
You ask him to do something, and he's like, oh yeah, well, I'll pick that up and I'll try. Now to his detriment ultimately, because when you have too many things to do, you can't do any of them well. And I'm not saying Ron doesn't do things well. I'm just saying that's one of the challenges that comes with people always giving you extra things to do. Ron subsequently has moved on to be the Human Resources Director for the city. So it is absolutely inappropriate for him to have anything to do because he has with trees and tree commission, because he has a million other things to do. So our thinking at the time, a couple of years ago, was to slot the arborist role in the lands portion of the city. And so we had a young man who got himself trained and took the test to be an arborist.
Yep.
And he was doing a great job in that capacity. And then he took a union position on the water crew.
Yeah.
And so, no longer is he in an appropriate position to function in an arborist capacity, not because of the fact that he's not a good person for it, but because the job that he took, and he sought some advancement, and he went to that. So right now we don't have a city arborist. And I don't know that we're going to in the near term. Andrew Chicky, as Deputy Service Safety Director, picked up some of the liaison responsibility just by virtue of the fact that the previous arborist was the Deputy Service Safety Director, not because Deputy Service Safety Director is the appropriate person to fit liaison to the Tree Commission in. And so a goal of mine in the coming months, especially with some of the turnover of folks on this, is to matriculate that liaison probably to Catherine Ann's department. Now, it might not be Catherine Ann specifically, and it might not be Aaron specifically. It might be another employee that they have in their department that will serve as ultimately the liaison to the Tree Commission for things non-regulatory. David will always be the regulatory liaison to the Tree Commission when it comes to things related to permits and things where the Tree Commission is advising the city administration on regulating the tree canopy within the city, whether it be right-of-way permits or Title 37 folks compliance with Title 37. But when it comes to initiatives like Tree City USA or an Arbor Day celebration, I really think the right spot probably is with the lands component of the city, and that lands component falls inside Catherine Ann's department. Right now, Kevin, who everybody knows and loves, is the labor supervisor for the Arts, Parks, and Recreation, has a million things to do and take care of, and he is not an appropriate employee, not because he's a bad guy, but because I don't expect Kevin to come to Tree Commission meetings and take notes and go manage projects. I need him to take employees and part-time employees and full-time employees and chainsaws and trucks and go and fix things. That's what I need him to do.
Yep.
I don't need him to manage programs. And so we're going to talk internally about where is the right spot for a person to attend your meetings and Because
What do we call that liaison? So you're a regulatory liaison. What would the other liaison be called?
program liaison, I think is probably the right spot.
good. Yep.
And
got it.
I don't want to call it arborist because I can't say they're going to get certified and be an arborist. So we just may not have that. But that is what I see 6 months from now, us landing. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted Catherine Ann to come tonight, introduce herself to you so you kind of knew.
Yeah.
And, she's got a million different interest groups, grabbing on her going, hey, I want my thing prioritized, whether it be soccer or
Yep.
pickleball or
pool.
the pool or art or, so it's not her total focus, but she will have a staff member that'll serve in this capacity in the future. We're just not quite there yet in that organizational structure. So I wanted to give that history. It's a goal of mine to kind of not make Andrew Chicky the guy to call for all things tree, because that's really not going to be the role going forward, but he's done a good job to date because he picked it up because he's that kind of guy that would do that.
You'll
And
just inform us when we're no longer interfacing with Andrew,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely,
Okay.
and I'll do that for
All
sure.
right.
But back to the original question here related to this is, how do we want to do for Tree City USA and Arbor Day celebration, and who needs to be the lead in that? I will have an answer by the next, because Arbor Day is 14 April, is that, or mid-April, is that
Yeah.
time frame?
Is Athens Beautification Day going ahead this year?
I think it will. Typically the catalyst for that is a university program.
That is
Right.
correct.
And the last couple of years, because of COVID, that's kind of,
Exactly. Well, and the person who was the liaison is no longer there, Barb.
Right.
But-
I did contact Chris Nisley, and I don't know, she was supposed to look into it.
I think there's a great interest in making things look nice going into this spring.
Yes.
Because, as we emerge from the pandemic and we expect a lot more visitors to Athens and to Ohio University, I think Beautification Day will happen. I don't know that it'll coincide with Arbor Day per se, but those two things. I think Councilmember Kraut has a comment as well.
Yeah, please, Sam.
So Barb Harrison is the person you're thinking of, and
Yes.
she is still at the university.
Oh, cool.
And she reached out to the Office of Sustainability to see if we could collaborate on an Athens Beautification Day. Now, I'm aware of the previous efforts by the University of the City, which have been massive, upwards of 800 to 1,000 volunteers out doing,
Right.
incredible work. And I let Barb know that scale was not on I didn't have the time to do something on that scale. But I could certainly help try to find projects.
Right.
And in a conversation with her, what we basically settled on is not a specific day, but what we're calling Athens Beautification Days. And they will be scattered different projects throughout the month of April. We already have, and we're trying to encourage students to take on projects. We have a student who wants to do a litter sweep of the Hawkins River Channel. We reached out to Athens Hawkins Soil Water Conservation District. They're going to assist with us. They're not doing one themselves.
Right.
Talked to the mayor about invasive species removal down
Yes.
along the bikeway. So there are certain things that are happening. It's not going to be on the kind of scale we've seen in the
Right.
past.
Well,
I'm not doing T-shirts for everybody.
Yeah.
None of that stuff.
The couple years ago, right before COVID, Barb and I and Mary Reed and some other people from the university were that it was all on the books of being the beautification month with planting 500 trees in Athens. And so there were some little nuggets of programs that had been started, and the idea wasn't that there was going to be 5,000 people going out on one day, that it would be this sort of thing, just centered around trees. And, so she knows some of the issues, some of the other, the things with the oak, that could go into it too. But one of the projects was to go to the, going and get not fish and wildlife, soil people, and buy a bunch of trees and give them out with with workshops on how to plant them, and that was going to help kind of equalize the trees across the city sort of thing. But Barb has probably a lot of the information and stuff from that very beginning of those planning processes.
So let me ask a question, and it's my own naivete, forgive me. Is Shade Tree Commission or does Shade Tree Commission have the responsibility for Athens Beautification Day?
No.
The answer, I think, is no, right? So what we as Shade Tree can do is we can say that as part of Athens Beautification Day, we would like to see that trees are planted in the city right away.
Absolutely.
And if that is what I think we're saying, then is there anything that we need to do as the Shade Tree Commission other than to say in our meeting today and in our meeting minutes that Shade Tree Commission recommends that Athens Beautification Day, which is a collaboration between the city and the university, consider planting trees in the city right away. And that if that moves forward, that you then come back to Shade Tree and ask our recommendations for what trees might be planted in what areas. Did I get that right?
Yes, I
Okay.
can answer to this. I think all of that is absolutely spot on. I think, what I would ask is, in between now and the next meeting, if you happen to be in a place and say that would be a good spot, bring it forward to the organization.
Okay. And
Because
actually,
that's
in
like
the
an
meeting, in the minutes of last meeting, we did, right? I believe that they're in the minutes. We did give recommendations for various places in the city where we could have trees planted. But if you need additional information, please let us know.
Just to interject, this is a good example of how the importance of communicating between Shade Tree Commission and Arts, Parks, and Recreation. Because if you're thinking of certain spaces that could be useful for trees, it would be really important to start having that discussion with myself early on before we decide, hey, this is a formal recommendation, just because as we're figuring out how we are going to work the land.
Especially in parks.
That would be, especially in the
The way
parks,
that it
yes,
works
the specific
is
parks.
We just go around and we say, we think a tree could go here. And then what happens is that list is then given to you and our job ends there. And then you can put it into your plan as you see fit. The only thing that we ask is that if you're planting in the city right away, then when you develop your plans, you come back to us and say, this is the property where we're thinking about having the trees. What trees do you recommend would be appropriate? So I think that we did it right. I think we put it into the minutes. The way that we record our official recommendations is via our minutes, but I bet you weren't getting our minutes. And
She's
so
only
we need to make sure that you need to get our minutes.
She's only worked here for a couple months.
I know. I don't even think it's been 4 full months.
Management plan done for city trees in Athens? When was?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
When
first part
was
of
the
the question.
last plan written for the urban trees? Okay, because I think that might be a good place to start, to see how well we did before. I know there's one floating around. I will ask Ann on that one. It's always good to start from something, right? But I think that we also want to be more proactive too, of saying, we want these trees here, sort of thing, instead of going back and forth. You can make a really management plan oriented where you have a menu and then that way it won't have to go back between all the meetings, because we only meet once a month, right?
Yeah, but let me interrupt for a second. That is not Shade Tree Commission's mandate. We make recommendations and we say, we think you should plan this.
Right.
This is best practice.
Right.
We
I'm
really
saying
need to
all
make,
at the same time, so we don't have, my
Yeah.
concern is if we go back and forth with, here are good places, and then they say, oh, that's great, what kind of trees? We can say, here are good places for these types of trees. Here's a menu of those that would be good for when we do put one forward. I think that might help people too.
yeah, we could give, a menu saying if it's wet, these are the good trees, but I think we don't have a lot. It's basically 2 times a year where we're basically going to plant trees, and if we were to make suggestions and then you were to come to us 2 meetings a year and just say, just like any developer would come to us and say, here's the planting plan, do you have any recommendations? I don't think that's a lot of back and forth. I think where we've run into problems before, if I'm honest, Chris, is that we didn't have them at the meetings.
Right.
And so, it would sort of be like, hey, David, we're going to give you a mandate to go reach out to your people, and then at the next meeting, tell us what they say, and then we would sort of comment on that, and then it would go back and forth that way. If, somebody from your unit commits to being here, I think that we can have a really good interaction, and hopefully we will never be rate limiting to the city. I mean, that's never going to be our intention. And also, I think it's really important for us to weigh in, and we will speak our minds, we do. But at the same time, I think that we always have to be respectful that it's the city that ultimately is going to make the decisions. And regarding the resources and the money and, everything else. So I hope that made sense. Okay, and I'm sorry you haven't been getting the minutes, and we'll get them to you.
Rox, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
So help me understand, I know that there is a lot of responsibility for the commission, and you're sort of spread thin. But there are two other permanent members, correct, who aren't able to be here tonight? Okay, and then there's two alternates as well?
I would say that the way that I will say it, since we are on TV, is that we have 4 active members.
Okay, so
Maybe 5, maybe
I think
5
that's
now,
part of our
maybe
problem,
5.
right, is that we need a full commission and maybe off TV that can be.
And
discussed. I just
part
know
of
the
it-
city
and
website
part of
says
it isn't
vacancy
even
for
against
two. So it
them.
says vacancy, so I don't
Yeah.
know. if-
I mean, part of it is COVID, and I just have to say that, we have a
Okay,
couple
sure.
elderly members, but
Sure.
then also we have some other issues.
Now, a lot of other commissions in the city, in fact, I thought they all did, have a student member.
I don't
if that's ever
know.
been considered for the tree commission, but.
Yeah, I think that looking at all these in the original code and finding which lines connect with each question, and I could do that. I started looking at that anyway,
Yeah,
because I'm weird, so.
you are not. You know
Just
code
like
better
I
than
have,
all
I
of
have enough
us.
code to read lately. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. So,
you're a code queen.
I am a code queen.
See? That's why we wanted you so badly here. You were actually recommended by the people who were here. Okay, so, I think we got through that. The next one's kind of a contentious thing, but I don't know that we can say a lot about it. It has to do with the Athens County Courthouse removal of trees. And I'm going to summarize, and you all can tell me if I got it right or wrong. The county notified the city that they wanted to remove the trees. The city notified the county that there was a process. The county did not follow that process. The trees were removed. At this point, the city has reached out to the county and is awaiting a response from the county. Basically, the letter outlines the responsibility of the county and their liability as per code. One of the issues comes about the fact that it is difficult, if not impossible, for a city to basically take up legal matters with the county, another state entity. And so there was some discussion about, is there a way that we could maybe modify code that would allow us to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again? And one of the ideas is that in code it says that the person responsible for the removal of the tree is liable, blah. But it talks about the individual, and it doesn't take into account that it might actually be another government entity. One of the things that I would like for us to maybe have a quick discussion of is, how would you guys feel if we also made the contractor who removed the tree liable? When you have a house built and you have renovations, it is the contractor, in addition to the property owner, who is liable for code. in this sense, we could basically say, county, go ahead, chop down the tree, but contractor, you did it, and you didn't have the proper authority, the proper permit, and guess what? We are coming after you. I don't, sometimes I worry about, spending too much time on something that is a one-off. How often does this kind of a thing really happen? Do we want to spin our wheels just to deal with something that doesn't happen very often? But part of me thinks that, it's a contract issue. And David, I'd be curious what you think. I mean, you run code. I'm not sure it's just the person who paid to have it done. To me, it's the contractors who are aware of code and should be the ones who are held liable if they don't stand up to code. What do you think?
That's what we would do. I think in this case, well, I'm not 100% sure, but I do think in this case that those trees were removed by employees of the county court system, not a contractor. I know there was a contractor that was going to do some repair on the wall there, but I'm not 100% on that. It was my understanding it was actually county employees that removed those trees.
We'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know who. I know it was just so very rapid.
It was very sad.
But the thing, okay, so if it's a county employee, is a county employee even empowered to chop down a tree?
Sure.
I mean, can't you say that if a tree is removed on city right away, that it has to be somebody who is certified with insurance and all that other good stuff? I mean,
So we do have codes in place that says that any tree removed from the right-of-way needs the permission from the city safety service director prior to removal.
yeah,
That's kind of our standard. It's been in the code for quite a while.
yeah. I guess what I'm asking is that just because if they were an employee of the county, are they protected as being an employee of the county? Or could they be held liable as an individual?
They would be bonded by the county.
That'd probably be a
They would be
question.
under.
Okay.
That's a great, and I'll speak to this a little
Yeah.
bit. I mean, when you're acting under the, all of my employees
Yeah.
at the city, when they're acting in the confines of their duties, unless it's a gross negligence situation or a willful misconduct situation, they're protected by both governmental immunity and then also under the liability protection as a government employee.
But this would be willful.
Well, I
Because
mean,
if there's code and they didn't follow code, that is willful.
well, you'd have to
it's
prove.
I think it's important, I don't want
they
to
did it
jump on here,
intentionally.
but I think it's important to recognize too with employees in this situation, if it's a county employee being told to go cut this tree down,
Right.
I'm not going to personally hold that person at fault. I'm going to look at the person who directed them to do this. I know
But if
a lot
you
of people
can't-
don't want to just ignore what their boss tells them to do.
Right.
And the
but
question
if
is, do we want to bring criminal charges against an elected official of another political subdivision? I mean, frankly, that's really what you're asking.
No,
and I-
actually,
And I don't know that we can, and to Ben's
you
point, I mean, we could.
legally, well, the city can't sue the county under state law. They can under federal.
But this is a criminal violation under our code.
So you can.
It's a criminal violation under city code, and do you bring criminal charges against a county employee who was told by an elected official to do something? Or do you bring criminal charges against that elected official? I don't know that we want to do that. And I
Yeah.
don't know that the judge would even entertain something like that. And that's
Yeah.
a great question for the law director ultimately.
Yeah, and under this one circumstance, it probably isn't covered, but under other circumstances, would it make sense to hold a contractor liable?
Sure.
Well, and we do have that contractor
Registration.
registration that's been on the books for a long time. That does help some of these yeehaws who come down and say, ooh, your tree looks so sad, you want to cut it for $250, give me money now and I'll cut it then. So that might help, and we may be able to put something in someplace about best management practices or certified arborist management practices. We could probably find something like that.
You know, a requirement for if someone is going to cut a tree in the right of way that they have to maintain a certain level of certification.
Yeah.
Whatever that certification is, I certainly would look to this commission to make that recommendation. And then, we could waive it if there was a need, but by and large, I think it's not a bad approach. One of the things that we've experienced is tree care contractors are hard to come by, particularly when it comes to large trees and people who have the capability to do it. And we struggle to find folks to cut dead trees, to trim large trees, simply because they're in such high demand.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that I'd want to make it too onerous to the point that, nobody was qualified to do it, because then I'd be waiving it all the time.
Right.
So when you look at such qualifications that you would want to, or certifications that you'd want to add to someone who is going to be permitted to do that, I think that I'd ask that, we just take that into consideration.
Yeah, so I think, I just want to make sure as I was writing. So the idea was maybe to require that there is some certification for people cutting down trees on the city right away, or to require that they have some kind of dispensation from the city to allow it. So it's part of the review process.
Yeah, I mean, certainly contractors are supposed to be registered if they work in the city, and I would contend most of our tree care contractors that work in the city have registered on a given year.
Right.
And so,
that means they're bonded.
yeah, it's rare that we would have somebody that come in, but it's not unheard of, so,
Okay, so because we seem to agree that this is something we should look into and it's becoming an action item, whose action item is it? Is there somebody from the commission who should be assigned to work with the city, or is it something that the city just wants to think about whether or not they would like to have code updated? That's sort of falling within code office, David. I'm looking at you. Is this?
We could certainly do that, but I'd really need a recommendation from the committee on what do you want? What kind of certification, what kind of bonding would you like to see? And then we can certainly make a recommendation to put that in place.
Okay, so we are going to provide some language to update code.
What's the registration bonding requirements for
You
the?
have to have a certificate of liability insurance.
Okay.
That you don't have to name the city as additionally insured, but that they have to have a valid insurance.
Is that
certificate.
something in code or outside of code?
That's in code.
That's in code.
Okay, so is that
That's
something that you could find and maybe share with the committee?
Contractor language, we can review that. I think that the right-of-way permit, I think we need to be really sure on that it says in bold, hello, dummies, that there is a permit that you have to get. You have to put it on the tree for 24 hours. We should do something like that, but public notice for these sort of things, because that's a public tree, and some communities do that. They have the county would have had to put a sign on it that says this tree will be cut down Monday morning at 9 o'clock. So if you wanted to do that.
So Chris, are you willing to take the lead on that and share it with Shade Tree, and then we can mull it over and then get it perfect? All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious whether the Shade Tree Commission is going to respond in any official way to the cutting of this tree,
Okay.
of these trees.
I'm not going to talk on behalf of Shade Tree, but I'm going to tell you my personal perspective. So I bumped into Steve this evening coming in, and I said, what's going on? And he said he hadn't heard yet. And I said, you need to give them a timeline by which they will respond. And if they do not respond, then the city needs to decide what they want to do with their right of way. And my recommendation was to clear out the trees because they were not actually totally removed, and to replace them at our cost, on our dime, but basically saying, we told you you were liable, this is what you are specifically liable for, pay it or don't pay it, you're gonna make that decision, and then the city would decide whether or not to sue for those funds. But I personally think that it would be important for us to replace those trees. One, it establishes our right, that this is our right of way. And two, those trees were planted for a very specific purpose. They are part of our beautification plan for Uptown Athens. So that was just what my recommendation is, but at this point, it's not within Shade Tree's purview to do anything according to code. Basically, code says that when there is this violation, we make an assessment of the value of the trees and for the replacement of the trees, and that information is then given back to the city, and that has happened. So as far as I know, do you guys agree? I think that we have fulfilled our obligation to the city on this matter. Now, me as just a regular citizen, I would love to go and picket in front of them and make their lives miserable, because I actually planted for Athens in Bloom. I planted the county gardens over there, which were gorgeous. Granted, they took really good care of them. But part of me feels like, are you kidding me? We thought we had a partnership going here where we were beautifying your space as part of the city, and you just became terrible city citizens. And it would have been one thing if they, I'm ranting now, but I'll just say, if they had come to us and said, we are convinced that these trees, are really ruining our building, even though that did not seem to be the situation. But if they made that argument to them, and then we came up with a plan of removing those trees and replacing those trees, and we had the conversation, I think everybody would have felt a lot better.
Well, where we are administratively at this point is we requested a replacement plan, and we haven't seen it yet. So, we'll make that inquiry again.
Yep.
Hey, where
But
is
maybe
it?
with a timeline, because if we are going to replace the trees, Andy, if somehow we're going to take that on, that we're going to lose daylight on that for when the optimal times to plant the trees.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
And we'll put that into our next entreaty to the county commissioners. But some of this is you can't make us between two political subdivisions ultimately, and that's unfortunate that's the nature of the situation. But that's what the nature of the situation is.
We might not be able to make them pay for it, but we do have the right to go in there and replant them.
We do, absolutely.
And I think that there is something to be said about putting a stake in the ground and saying this is our property. Now, Jim, you know far more about trees than I do. If they were to do a city plan, would you work with Ann maybe to come up with some trees that would be responsive to maybe the county's concerns about, foundation issues? You know a lot more than I do about tree interactions with buildings.
I don't know much about that.
You know more than I do is what I said.
But I could certainly talk to Ann. Is that,
Yeah.
you mentioned Ann?
Yeah, maybe work with Ann, and then David and Andy, if it gets to that point where you need shade tree recommendations for trees.
Absolutely. Well, if I do get a response from the county, you're the first body that I will provide it to.
Yeah.
I found it just really sad that, this whole episode happened, and that whole corner has gone from something that was fairly lively to now it seems like it's now all cement, and that our one green space where we cannot actually connect and hang out, because we don't really have a town common and stuff, has kind of been just taken over by cement, and then this is like the kind of final little poke in that corner. I would like for, in the future to be able to work with the Uptown people and the SID people uptown, looking at those sort of issues too, because they have a stake in this too. And the SID is the Special Improvement District, because they probably have a lot, they have some issues and some plans too, and so we should probably bring them in the discussion at some point about
Yeah.
stuff, so.
I guess I'm gonna say something that's also really difficult. There's obviously a conflict of interest here. City's legal is married to one of the county commissioners. And I have no idea how this went down. But I would hope that there may be somebody willing to look into whether or not that was a potential issue. And I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, I feel for the spouse of the, potentially the person who was one of the perpetrators, and, you know, when the city makes the decision whether or not to pursue legal issues, are they maybe trying to work with outside counsel so that way they don't cause conflict of interest for one of their own employees? I hope I said that all right.
And if I can respond,
Yeah.
in my observation, so, you know, our city law director is absolutely outstanding at.
She is outstanding.
Well, no, not only in their job, but also at when there is a situation of a recusal type situation of completely
Yeah.
removing yourself, and then assigning one of her prosecutors, other attorneys that work for her with complete autonomy to work on behalf of the city when it comes to a city-county interaction on a legal matter. An example would be on the Southwest Sewer Expansion project where the city, I mean, I've worked with one of the county prosecutors to function as our legal counsel in regards to that interaction for the last several years. And so I want to definitely say that I don't believe there's any issue related to that particular relationship in this situation. Now, the other thing, and this is just an external observation, but it seems as though with the various county commissioners that, you know, each of the three take different areas and tend to focus on that. And I don't believe that particular county commissioner was involved in this decision making related to this situation. So, you know, I would say in this situation that conflict is irrelevant.
Well,
really.
I'm glad, but I'm also glad that you're protecting our city employee from any potential perception.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, thank you. I think that's also really important. Okay, the last item that we have to discuss, I know we're having a longer than usual meeting, is the permit draft. Chris?
Well, I put it out, I didn't bring it because I wasn't sure if we wanted to go forward with a big draft change. I wanted to hear what other people said.
This is specifically related to the code and the removal of trees in the right of way?
Looking at the permit.
Okay.
But also looking at, well, we might as well look at the code that constituted us, and we can do a little review, and then we can put those 4 areas out and make sure that we know our role and our job descriptions. And if they're not fluffy enough, not fluffy, full enough, we may want to make some of those job descriptions a little more set, and maybe identifying our new liaison people in those too. So I'll just throw
I'm
that
curious,
out on
what are these
email.
job descriptions?
The job description of what we do as a commission, our 4 areas, those sort of things.
Oh, okay, so
Make sure
you're
that we all
talking
know.
about going through existing code to make sure it's clear what Shade Tree Commission does.
Right.
Got it.
It's good to, since
Yeah.
we're kind of new, this is kind of what I'm getting. It's good to look at our birthday cards from years past to make sure that we still are up to speed with what we need to do. And it may be that we don't do one of the things, if we've never done one of the 4 things very well, and we want to not do it anymore, sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Okay, so I'm putting you
Update-
down as you're
update.
going to review code related to Shade Tree and update us with suggested revisions
If we need them. We may not need them.
if needed. Yep. Okay. Ben, we don't usually go this long. It's probably because I'm sitting in the seat today. It's terrible.
I'm used to council meetings. This is nothing.
Okay, any other business? Yeah, David, please.
If I could just, I missed this earlier. We were talking about contractors that need to be registered to do pruning.
Yeah.
It does say in 330103 that the Shade Tree Commission will maintain a list of qualifications that persons or companies shall meet in order to perform work on pruning, removing, or planting a tree. So that is one of your tasks.
Okay, and so that means that we haven't done that.
Or
Okay,
there's a list sitting around, I bet.
I haven't seen one.
Okay.
okay, so one of our things
Maybe
is.
we should ask Ron.
I'm sorry?
Maybe we should ask Ron.
I can ask him, I don't know
Yeah,
if he
maybe
has it.
through this
either.
process, we might be able to identify some of these things that says list and ask him, because he seems to be the one who has been the most.
Well, you might have some institutional history.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I mean, yeah.
So what title is it again? Sorry, it's
330103C.
0103C for qualifications.
And I think Paul has an old plan, an old tree plan. One's floating around.
Okay, and so you'll be looking for
Yeah,
that,
I
okay.
have seen one, it might be super duper old.
Okay. And, all right, Kristen.
Actually, and I do have one other business
Yeah,
item.
please.
I know that Ann Bonner had mentioned that there's a Tree Commission Academy in June.
Yes.
And I would highly recommend that as many commissioners as possible could attend that. It's going to actually be in Logan, so it's not a very long drive to go to that. Also, speaking with the mayor, it's important to reiterate that any training event that is desired by this body for the body to participate in, that costs money, we're empowered to pay for that. So if there's a training event for an individual or for the group as a whole, and you say, hey, it would be really great if we could do this, there's no problem in the city paying that fee associated. I can't give you a stipend, but I can pay for training. And
Do you
know,
remember when it was? Was it in July?
maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was
think
July,
it's
but
July.
Ann had sent out something about it.
Yeah, and I said that I was interested.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody else was
I might be, I'm
interested.
not sure.
If there's a fee though, and I didn't look to see if there's a fee, but if there's a fee, by all means, we'll.
I put it in the minutes, charge city for fees.
Charge city for fees, absolutely.
But not
In fact,
extras.
well, if you come and say
So much
that
trouble.
these many people are going to go, we'll go ahead and take care of signing you up as well
Yeah,
and paying. the
I
fee.
agree. But in addition to shade tree commissioners, the people from the city who work with shade tree are also, I believe, encouraged
Sure.
to attend.
Yep.
So if anybody would find it helpful to
Give me
sign
some
up
time
as
to pick who that person's going to be, and then by all means we'll.
I was actually looking at Ben.
Oh,
It's like, Ben, let's go. Logan, come on, it'll be fun.
Gonna give you a big old fat maybe on that one.
You can go camping.
Okay.
Oh, camping? I'm out. I sleep in a bed.
Amen. Glamping. Any other business before we adjourn? I just wanted to say what a pleasure it was to have all of you here. I think that a lot of the times our meetings are like, we should be doing this. We'll go and talk to the individual, and instead we were able to just sort of bounce ideas off really readily tonight. So I would encourage you all to come back next month. And until then, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have to?